Hello everyone and welcome. This is SEC Fanatic. I'm your host Matthew Johnson. Thank you guys for coming in here today and listening wherever you are listening, whether that be watching it on YouTube or listening on iTunes or Stitcher. In case you haven't been here before, this is a podcast about SEC news from a fan's perspective, purely a fan's perspective, and that's me, in case you didn't know. But I also like to bring in other guests who know a little more about sports than I do. One of those people today is a man by the name of Joel Godett. And this time I stepped outside of the SEC actually to do this interview, but it was with someone who I felt was credible enough and had good enough information to where it was okay to step outside of the SEC. He is the Ball State play-by-play announcer, but he also has his own podcast, and it's called Play-by-Play Cast, and it's all about play-by-play announcers. And so I thought it would be fun to go in and get inside of the booth and see what it's like for the people you hear over the radio or sometimes on TV for calling the football games or any sport, just for you guys to see what it's like. So I reached out to Joel Godett, and he said it'd be fine. And so, last week we conducted this interview, and here it is for you all today. But first, I would like to remind you guys to go and check out, on Fridays I release a YouTube-only video that has to do with preseason football. And this week, what I'll be releasing tomorrow is Alabama's 2018 college football preview. So if you're interested in that, that's going to be on YouTube under the same channel, SEC Fanatic, but it is only, like I said, going to be a video. I would also like to say that thank you guys for coming on and voting for the SEC Fanatic Player of the Year. I really appreciate all of you guys that came out and voted in the Google Forms. And on the clickety-click things if you're on YouTube, the little eye dots at the top of the screen. But yes, what you guys voted on to be the SEC Fanatic Player of the Year, the man is Kerryon Johnson. If you don't know who that is the Auburn running back, and I think the Auburn fans really reached out to be able to vote. He was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, the official one, not just the SEC Fanatic one. He had 1,391 yards rushing for 18 rushing touchdowns, averaging 4.9 yards per carry. He was number one in the SEC for touchdowns from scrimmage, yards from scrimmage, rush attempts, plays, and rushing touchdowns. He is the SEC Fanatic Player of the Year. Thank you guys for voting. Really excited to be able to do that again next year. And we'll be getting back to the Player of the Week once we hit football season again. Alright, it's time for our interview with Joel Godett. I hope you guys enjoy, and here he is. So again, we are here with Joel Godett. He is the play-by-play announcer for Ball State. What sports do you do?
What sports don't I do? Football, basketball, baseball are the main ones. Throw some volleyball in there, and then I've dabbled in anything ranging to field hockey and gymnastics, so a little bit of everything.
Oh, wow. So you're very well-rounded play-by-play announcer.
Depends on the day, but I'll take it.
So in case people out there aren't sure, what exactly is a play-by-play announcer?
Yeah, for sure. If I can put this in SEC terms for you, we are the Eli Gold, the Rod Bramblett. We are the voice that you are listening to in your car or on your patio or at your tailgate that tells you what's going on. We're basically your eyes and ears for those that aren't at the event, or if you are at the event, a lot of people do like to listen. Take their kind of transistor radios, their little, I don't know what they're called, those little things you latch onto your ear. They usually give them out at the Super Bowl, and you can listen in the stadium too. You have that soundtrack to whatever you're seeing, and you get information to what you're seeing. So we're kind of that voice of the game, if that makes sense.
So what was your journey to becoming the voice of Ball State?
Yeah, so you cut your teeth. You do some different things in some random places. I've been fortunate that I grew up in the Northeast. I'm an East Coast guy, and I've kind of been able to spend the bulk of my career on this half of the country. So I graduated from college, and I went down to Florida, and I worked down there at the University of South Florida and in minor league baseball, and then went up to South Carolina and worked in minor league baseball, and worked at a couple different colleges along the way. Fairleigh Dickinson University is a small school just outside New York City and New Jersey, and you do enough, and you hopefully take the right steps and go to the right places and get better along the way that you catch somebody's eye, and then when a position like this one opens up, you put yourself in a spot to be the voice of a D1 institution.
So when you are up there in the booth or wherever you are and you're calling a game, what's it like up there? Because I don't think many people really know what it's like to be up there.
Yeah, it's wild. And again, I'll put it in SEC terms for you here too, because I called a game 2 years ago at Texas A&M, and the 12th man is one of the coolest places you can go from a football experience, from a sports experience, just from an experience standpoint. And in that case, and in a lot of cases, the press box is very high up, and you kind of get this bird's eye view of what the atmosphere is like. So when you're at a place like Texas A&M, you are standing on top of the stadium looking down at the 12th man rocking and looking down on the action, and you really get it's an interesting vibe. You just get this cool feel. And then your job is not just to soak that in, but it's also to soak that in and relay it to those people that aren't experiencing it with you, which is, I think, a lot of the fun of it. So that's really kind of what it boils down to. We do this because we like to go to the events and we like to have those experiences, and then our job is to share that with you. And that's kind of the nutshell of what we go through on a week in and week out, or if you're talking basketball or baseball, night in and night out basis.
So, can you walk us through, like, say, a football play? Just walk us through what kind of goes through your mind as you are calling a play, just any random play.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different pieces to it. First and foremost, I've got to get it back from my analyst. So he is making his point about the most recent play. And then I've got to do the calculation in my head of how much time I've got left to talk before the play starts. And in this day and age, that's not a lot, because offenses go so quickly. But I'll make that guesstimation in my head, and I'll look at what's in front of me, and I've got to relay what I see and what the formation is. Is it a shotgun? Is it a pistol? Is he under center? Are there two wide receivers to one side and two to the other? Are there three to one side and none to the other? Where's the tight end? Where are the running backs? Who are the running backs? What formation is the defense in? Is it a 3-4? Is it a 4-3? Is it a radar defensive line where the defensive line is all standing and they don't necessarily have a set position? Is it man? Is it zone? Is it tight coverage in the secondary? Is it soft coverage in the secondary? Is it cover 2? You're looking for all those things. Is there a blitz? Where's it coming from? And then, of course, you've got to get in the most important things: down, distance, yard line, time, and score. And you're doing all of that in a span of about 3 to 5 seconds. And that's just before the play starts. And once the ball is snapped, you're pretty much on the ball. So it's, quarterback drops. Where's he looking? Where's the rush? And then once he throws, you follow the ball to the receiver and, is it caught? Is it dropped? Where it is? And then you put a bow on it real quick, you get it to your analyst, he gets it back to you, and you do the whole thing over again, some 150 times a night.
In all of that, in all of that real busyness and here and there, and especially when you go to baseball games and you maybe have a baseball game every night, or maybe your team isn't necessarily doing the best that day, how do you go about keeping interest in games that maybe necessarily don't go so well for your team?
That's the fun part. That's the $1 million question. That's our job at the end of the day, and a lot of it comes down to story. Why, and you have to break that down. There's a macro and there's a micro to that. You break it down on the micro level of why is this game important? Why is this play important? And even if it's not as obvious as its impact on the score, let's talk about minor league baseball. at the end of the day, wins and losses don't mean anything in minor league baseball. There are some organizations that try to win because they're trying to develop a culture. Pittsburgh was very big into that when I was in the Pirates organization. They wanted the guys to win at the minor league level, so they knew what it was like to win at the major league level. And that's obviously worked out for them over the last couple of years. But at the end of the day, it's truly an individualistic thing. So if you're down 10-0, this at-bat is still important for Johnny Smith because Johnny Smith is working on trying to, do this with a pitch on the outside. Johnny Smith is batting 110 and is trying to get himself back to a respectable spot, and he's doing so by working on his hand positioning. Like, you're trying to tell the stories of these individual people within this greater structure that might not be going well for you that night. So you have to look at it that way. Football last year, I broadcast a football team that went 2-10, and the 10 were not pretty. They gave up 50 or 60 points several times throughout the course of the season. And within that, you've got to call the game, but you've also got to keep people around, and you've got to tell stories about people, and you've got to tell them why they should care about all of these people that they're listening to, even though the game is out of hand. And that's where it becomes fun in terms of getting to know the athletes and their stories and who they are as people.
Do you have a favorite memory from your time in broadcasting?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, there's a ton. I'm trying to think how to even break that down. From a physical broadcasting standpoint, I've called a couple no-hitters. Those are always cool because you always want to do that, and then you don't want to jinx it, and then it gets to the point where you realize it's going to happen. That's always fun. The basketball game at Notre Dame this past year that Ball State famously won right before the buzzer, that led Sports Center. That was obviously really cool. The places you get to go, the trips you get to go on. I've been to Salt Lake City because of broadcasting and done a game at Utah, and I mentioned the 12th Man, and I broadcast the CrossFit Games, so I got to go to Rio de Janeiro to broadcast the regional round of that. Like, all expenses paid, I got to fly to Brazil. There's things that this profession affords you in terms of experiences and travels and places you get to see that not everyone gets. But I'm sure there are perks to other people's jobs too. So I guess it all evens out in some ways.
So let's say someone is looking to become a play-by-play announcer. When they get older, they're an aspiring broadcaster. What are some tips that you would have as far as practice, preparation, maybe some good colleges and degrees and whatnot?
Don't. You have to want it, and you have to want to work for it. It's not easy. It's hard. For every person that makes it, there are 5 to 10 that don't. And making it is defined differently by different people as well. So there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. Making it could be, I want to be Kevin Harlan, and I want to broadcast Monday Night Football, and I want to be, on the biggest stages and calling the biggest games. Making it could also be, I want to be the voice of high school sports in East Slingshot, wherever, and I want to be a local voice that matters to local people in that way. That not that you don't have a connection with people at a national level, but like that you have a different kind of connection at a local level. I think both of those people are very important to what broadcasting is, and both of those people are very successful in their own ways. So you kind of have to ask yourself what you want to do and what is success to you. And then you've just got to be able to sacrifice. And I live far away from my family. I don't get to see them often. I think personal life is something that you sacrifice a lot too, in terms of friendships and relationships and things like that, because it's difficult. The more mobile you are earlier in your career, the better off you are too, because sometimes you have to go to different places that you might not have gone to originally, or that might take you out of your comfort zone. So you have to be flexible, and you have to be able to do a lot of things and go a lot of places, and know the meaning of the word yes, and just anytime an opportunity comes, like, yes, I'm going to do it. Is it for a lot of money? No, but yes, I'm going to do it because I want the experience, and it's going to be better for me in the long run. And, for every person that has their trials and tribulations and has to go to, not a knock on Idaho, but has to go to Idaho and broadcast and cut their teeth there will, of course, be the person who was great out of college and immediately is thrust onto the national scene. Like, that happens too. So if you're really good and you have great talent, you'll be found, and maybe it's sooner than later. As far as going to colleges, there's a host of really good ones. I work at a really good one right now at Ball State. Obviously, I went to Syracuse. That's a great one. Florida, I believe, has got a pretty good program, or has churned out some people down in the SEC. So, there's opportunities everywhere to get your start in this, but you just have to be willing to work for it.
So let's switch over and talk about your podcast, Play by Playcast. What exactly, can you just describe what that's about?
Yeah, it's a podcast about play-by-play. So we just talk with other announcers about the craft and what they do, experiences they've had, cool games they've called, and how they do what they do. What their prep is like, how they call big moments, how they prepare themselves for the big moment, how they use their voice, all those kinds of nerdy things about play-by-play we dive into on a weekly basis.
Who's been your favorite person to interview, or do you have a favorite?
I was thinking about that this morning, actually. I was flipping through some old back episodes. Dan Horde is a guy that I've admired a lot. He's this most recent episode as we record this, you and I here. Dan Horde's the voice of the Bengals and the Cincinnati Bearcats. He was really awesome. Mike Breen is the voice of the NBA Finals on ESPN and ABC, and is the voice of the New York Knicks. He's really awesome, and he was a cool one to have. John Boog-Sciambi from ESPN, Dan Schulman from ESPN were good ones. We just had Rod Bramblett on from Auburn a couple of weeks ago. He was a fun one, just because we got to talk about the kick six and we talk about calling big moments. That was a fun one to kind of relive and understand what's going on in his brain while he's watching something that is just ridiculous play out in front of him. Eli Gold was fun too, by the way, just because we later went down to play Alabama, and I had a chance to sit and talk with him and get to know him a little bit more. So that was fun too. And that's part of the fun too, is getting to know these guys beyond just a half hour on the phone. So.
Well, where can we find the podcast?
Yeah, you can find it on iTunes or Stitcher, much like yours. If you're listening to this right now, it's also on YouTube, much like yours. So if you're listening to this right now, if you just search PXPcast or play-by-playcast, you can find it that way as well.
All right. Well, again, this has been Joel Godett, the voice of Ball State. Thanks for coming out and taking your time out for this, for these couple of minutes here, and just telling us about you and what you've done and how you got there.
Matt, I appreciate it, man. Best of luck to you with this. All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Okay. It's been a great pleasure to be able to talk to you today, and thank you for coming out here and taking your time out to watch the podcast, listen to the podcast, and I really appreciate it. I really do. And if you would like to comment, share, subscribe, rate, review, all those kinds of things, it would really be appreciated by me. Thank you again for coming out here, and check out tomorrow's video on YouTube that's going to come out, as well as all the other podcasts that we have. There's plenty more to check out again on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. This has been SEC Fanatic. God bless.